Well, once again, it's been a few weeks. I'm still in the process of moving. As you can see, I still have tape paint. A little Steam VR guy there. Really nice having a big room for all that stuff. Anyways, it's nice to be back. Mostly settled in. Have some to do here in my office, like move my actual thing packed my stuff. But anyways, it's been a while, and I'm going to be back on a normal schedule, so that's nice. But with that in mind, here talk about Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2 is as masterfully as crafted as a sequel can be that builds on the strengths of the original game, its world, also the 2019 hit Control, which was also for Remedy, while also introducing new elements and a full shift into survival horror within the newish Remedy Connected Universe. I say newish because that was established with DLC for Control, which brought it to under that entire thing. I can't say this enough. Alan Wake 2 is a masterpiece. Go out and play through it. Any conversation of Game of the Year that omits this title in any serious manner, if this is not contending with anything or is not above most other things, it honestly should be thrown out. But if that doesn't convince you, I will go into further detail in this review and my impressions of the title and hopefully convince you to I do about Alan Wake 2 is a masterpiece. Let us start with the most important aspect for this title, its narrative. Alan Wake 2 is, in the simplest terms, a mindfuck in the best way possible that Remedy has delivered a masterclass on horror while throwing in numerous surprises to subvert your expectations and fully delivers on everything included. Not only are portions of the title perfectly executed to be suspenseful and push you to the edge of your seat with its horror base, but other portions will completely blindside you and change the tone, becoming near comedy, then immediately switching back flawlessly and fluently to horror. As for the story itself, well, there are two parts to it. Each follows a different main character. Of course, one follows Alan Wake as he battles through the dark place and the dark presence itself once more, and his story takes place in a dark and twisted version of New York within the dark place. Conversely, we have Saga Anderson, FBI agent set to Bright Falls and its surrounding area to investigate a murder which drags her into the world of Alan. The inclusion of Saga is brilliant for a couple of reasons. Saga is a new character to the world, Remedy universe, and creates a perfect point for new fans and players to jump into the game as well as the series. No prior knowledge is needed to enjoy the game, but Saga helps bring outside players into the twisted world of Alan Wake through his. Each character has their own sort of game to play through, their own story, their own goals, as well as their own gimmicks. Saga has her Mind Place, a take on the Sherlock Holmes Mind Palace, where she pieces together the clues she comes across to solve a mystery taking place in Bright Falls and its surrounding areas. You have your investigation board where you pin evidence and you find people and events to solve the mystery as you go through the experience. Also have your profiling station where you create profiles of persons of interest you come across, extract extra information out of them, or their motives. Alan has his writing room. He writes, also located in Dark Place. Alan can enter his writing room, and in specific areas of the Dark Place, he can write up alternate stories for the zones, completely changing them. This changes these areas visually and gameplay wise to help you solve puzzles, find new items, secrets, as well as advance the story of Alan Wake and his time in the Dark Place. Each character also has their own 3 unique weapons, which can be upgraded via different collectibles. Saga will collect manuscript pieces found in hidden lunchboxes throughout Bright Falls, while Alan will discover words of power scrawled on walls, such as graffiti. You can play through the stories however you like, with one exception. Always play first as Saga Anderson, then Alan. Once you are finished with these two introductory chapters, well, you are free to switch back and forth as you see fit, or run through all of one story at a time and then switch to the other. I would recommend, however, that you switch back and forth per each chapter. This does make the game very flexible to play it. Each storyline is in itself survival horror and plays similarly. Their execution is a bit different. As Saga, you'll be going through Bright Falls and its surroundings, such as the Cauldron Lake Campground, Coffee World, Carnival, looking for clues, evidence, and gathering items that function as keys, opening up new places to go and explore and continue your story in. As Alan in the dark and twisted New York will be modifying your area and the world itself via puzzle solving using switching moving lights as well as writing up different stories for the regions you're in to get what you are seeking and then continue on your escape from the dark place. Like I said, best way to play through the game is to alternate each chapter for the two protagonists, but you are free to play through however you like. Saga is great and introduced into this as she is new to the entire universe, much like a new player to the games would be, and she is just as much in the dark as to the Alan Wake universe as a new player would be. It is a great way to start the game overall, so props to Remedy on this clever decision on including her, especially as the first playable character in the game. Now, I don't want to go into too much here, but Remedy, much like with all of their titles, has mastered the inclusion of live action scenes into their games. It was great with how they put it within Control, where you have Jesse speaking with the former director Trench as weird world overlaying video calls of sorts. Alan Wake 2 does take this just an even little further. There's one level that does stand out under Alan Wake, and probably one of the best levels in any game that I've played, delivering exposition that would normally be boring and lengthy in just an absolutely amazing scene to both witness and play through. I'm of course talking about that by now popular, memed Old Gods of Asgard musical level. This level leads into another point of my review. The game just looks and sounds absolutely outstanding. Plenty of outlets have shown that even on consoles the game looks good, but to get it looking amazing, you do need a high-end machine. I did play this on an i9 13900K with an RTX 4090, and despite some Unreal Engine 5 fallbacks and typical issues with this setup, such as having to reduce my core frequency to 5.0, 6 below its default speed, Alan Wake 2 has set a new standard for visuals in gaming. Not only were performance issues non-existent for me, as is any title that you set up correctly for your machine, nor were there any obvious overlooked flaws. An occasional visual bug popped up, but nothing so regular as to be a detriment to my playthrough and enjoyment of Alan Wake 2. From the rainy woods around Cauldron Lake and its campsite, to the small Pacific Northwest lake town of Bright Falls, this is the best I've ever seen any locations like these represented in practically any media. As someone native to the Pacific Northwest, I can say that not only do these locations look like it was just copied and pasted out of the backcountry of the PNW, the characters you encounter, their feel, their conversations, their mannerisms, they feel like they were pulled out of one as well. Playing a Saga was an absolute treat for me. As I can say that having lived in Texas for a year and a half, I do sometimes miss that rainy, overcast, kind of cold, damp Pacific Northwest feel, and this just kind of made me long for that a bit more. Certainly, Alan Wake is in the dark place as well. Contradictory to how the PNW feels, it is the dark and crowded streets of New York. Subway systems to high-rise apartments to TV show sets. I'm also convinced that this was the best representation in a video game of any of these settings as well. Minus the hustle and bustle you typically see, it's still the best representation I've ever seen. of New York in a game to date. A lot of this is due to Remedy's care in crafting every part of the environment, and of course, UEFI's phenomenal ray tracing and shadow casting technology baked into the engine. If you're not afraid of a horror game, but rather like to marvel at a technical masterpiece, I highly recommend Alan Wake 2 for that reason alone. But for the average player, you're going to be amazed at how everything just comes together in a perfect package either way. I haven't even spoken of how great the voice work is. The sound design in general, locale, voice cast across the board is fantastic, from Alan Wake and his cutscenes to the voiceover as you progress to the dark phase. From Saga Anderson and her partner Alex Casey as they're on the case to the townsfolk in various commercials and Bright Falls. Voice acting is just top notch, and there's a little bit of that weird finishness in there. Something needs to be said of the voice work of the various enemies that Alan Wake himself will face as well. Now, New York is populated by various shadows, and not every shadow will be a physical threat to you, but every shadow will hauntingly threaten you. Throwing threats at Alan keeps you and the player on the edge, not knowing if you need to waste your resources on that particular potential enemy, or if they're just being an average New Yorker on the streets. Overall, Alan Wake 2 is, I fully believe, the best game released this year in nearly every aspect, and it's not even close. No other game come close to its graphical fidelity or visuals. Its voice acting and sound design are second to none outside of maybe song or two in Baldur's Gate 3. The story is the most complete and best story we've had released in a game this year, full of twists and hooks between two separate, intertwining moments involving two different people that work together perfectly, come together satisfyingly. But the only shortcoming I can think of is if you perhaps aren't into slower playing games, such as survival horror games. Think of like the Resident Evil series, or at least like the remake of 4 or 7 or 8. Those are slower survival games. That's what you're getting. Really slow, methodical gameplay, managing your in game resources, killing what enemies you should, ignoring ones you shouldn't. And typically, I'm not a fan of these games. They're a bit slow for me. I like fast paced action games. I like RPGs, shooters, stuff like that. This wasn't an issue for me. I remember Alan Wake. I remember Control being phenomenal. It was definitely more of an actiony third person game. And with Alan Wake 2 being in that universe and just loving what Remedy has put out over its history, I went in and this wasn't an issue for me. Something I was able to get by. So the slower pace did not bother me, and I really think that no matter what, you should give this game a try. It was difficult writing a script for Alan Wake 2. Not gonna lie. The game speaks to me on nearly every level. Atmosphere created in both Bright Falls and New York are second to none. The story of both Saga Anderson and Alan Wake coming together while completely separate at times, perfect. The odd and absolutely surreal moments you come across, such as the live action commercials, um, which you can repeatedly rewatch after you come across them once, or the talk show segments that Alan Wake himself is part of, in between with Mr. Door, and of course the Old Gods of Asgard musical gameplay section. That is just bar none the best level in video game design I've ever experienced. It's just so perfect to me. Cap it off with easily the best looking game across the board that we have ever seen. Parts of it that need to be realistic are realistic. Parts of it that are stylized, such as specific aspects, characters, and whatnot, those are stylized. It's, simply put, Alan Wake 2 is game of the year. Go play it. I absolutely recommend this game to everybody. Anyways, thanks for watching. through to this point. If you have, I do appreciate it. If you've enjoyed the review, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. My move into my new home is now complete. The move itself is the finishing touches need to be placed, like some painting needs to be done, some touch, almost everything, minus a work desk. So with that on the back burner, I'll be moving to more regular videos on the way, and I'll also be returning to weekly news bits. So thanks for tuning in.